guys, it's Kayla.
And Jim.
Welcome back to another Meteorology Monday. Before we talk about weather today, let's talk about weather in our area. What's going on? How's it been? How's the past weekend been here in good old Charlotte, North Carolina?
For those of you that like NASCAR and anything associated with NASCAR, you've probably been seeing that the races were canceled, rescheduled, delayed, postponed, all the
things.
All those things over this past Memorial Day weekend. And you had an opportunity to go down to see the Xfinity race.
I did, yeah. I spent like 4 days at the track because the race kept getting postponed and pushed back, and then it ended at like 11 p.m. But it was a fun time. That's the weather in our area these days. Some sort of tropical. It's not a storm. It's not a tropical depression. It's kind of along those lines. What's a step below tropical anxiety? Like step below tropical depression. Nor'easter, low pressure, the lows to weird weather things going on. And of course, it's when NASCAR's in town.
Of course. Actually, a low pressure formed off the coast, but at the same time, we had an upper low that had been moving in from west to east toward our area. And what happened is the upper low started pulling that surface low from the ocean and pulled it into the Carolinas. And they kind of did this Fujiwara effect. So, speaking of Fujiwara effect, we have a video. Editing Kayla is going to link it down below, and you can check that out as well. But yeah, so we just had a few days, like 3, 4, 5 days of just this coming in and the clouds rolling in and all this stuff going on. So yeah, it postponed a lot of the races, and people had to redo their plans. And
no Memorial Day cookouts this weekend in the southeast.
Well, we actually did a consolidated cookout for us in the rain, no umbrella, because you can't kind of hold the
burgers in the rain. It is in fact still overcast and kind of misty out today. So hopefully we get back to some summer weather now that the beaches and the lakes and everything are open and summer is upon us. Hopefully we can get into the summer spirit of things soon. It was also 55 degrees this weekend.
For a high temperature.
In May.
And that is very low for the Charlotte region, so.
Speaking of temperatures though, what are we talking about today?
What we are going to talk about today.
Did you like that segue?
I love that segue. That was great. Caught me a little off guard, but I'm flowing with it. Here we go.
We're rolling with it.
So speaking of temperatures, we are going to talk about the 2021 Pacific Northwest Western Canada heat wave. This was really interesting, and we're doing this in a case study format because it needs a little bit of discussion in terms of the meteorological setup and what actually happened and the impacts. I think this is going to be really exciting to talk about this one this week.
But before we get started,
hit it, Kayla.
Make sure that you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe down below if you are enjoying it along the way. Keeps you updated for when we post, and we'd love to have you join the Meteortech Weather fam. Also, make sure that you are following us over on Instagram and Facebook, and if you're interested in learning about weather, check out our School of Weather, where you get to see us talk about the basics of meteorology and get into the details of some severe weather stuff. Now let's get into the meteorological setup for this event.
On June 20th, 2021, an upper low over the northern Pacific Ocean began advecting colder air from the Bering Sea. This allowed the upper level jet to strengthen and led to the development of a low pressure system. The strengthening upper level jet caused the weather pattern to amplify, which deepened the upper low while strengthening the upper level ridge downstream. By June 21st, the upper level ridge began to build toward the Pacific Northwest. High temperatures that day rose to the upper 90s Fahrenheit across the Columbia Basin, which prompted the Pendleton, Oregon National Weather Service to issue heat advisories for the lower basin area. This weather pattern would continue to strengthen and develop into one of, if not the, worst heat wave for these regions in modern record-keeping times. These regions are not known for nor accustomed to dangerous heat waves, unlike the southwest United States. As the days progressed, the cloudless skies and sinking air associated with strong high pressure contributed to the record temperatures. In the northern hemisphere, the wind blows clockwise around high pressure. With the anomalously strong high pressure to the north, the winds were primarily blowing from east to west across the region. This would cause the wind to blow from the mountains and high plateaus westward, allowing the air to sink from higher elevations to lower elevations. This caused the air to compress and heat up. This is known as downslope winds and can dramatically raise the temperatures along the western coastlines. By June 25th, the axis of the ridge was positioned over the Pacific Northwest and remained in place for the next 5 days. Daily record highs were set across most areas under the ridge, with all-time record high temperatures set on June 27th, 28th, and 29th for many locations. The hottest two temperatures recorded during this event occurred on the 28th and 29th. On June 30th and July 1st, the upper-level ridge began to break down due to a developing trough over the Gulf of Alaska. The heat wave led to at least 116 deaths in Oregon and 140 deaths in Washington. The majority of deaths occurred in the major metro areas of Portland, Oregon and Seattle, Washington. One of the reasons for so many deaths was the fact that many homes in these areas lack sufficient cooling. These regions typically do not see these types of temperatures, especially for this long of a time period. Fewer deaths were seen across northeast Oregon and south central Washington, as these areas are more acclimated to summer heat waves.
Here are some high temperature records set for that area. Some interesting facts about the extreme heat are: Portland, Oregon's average high temperature over this period of time was 112 degrees Fahrenheit, the hottest 3-day period on record by an astonishing 6 degrees. All 3 days, 108 degrees on the 26th, 112 on the 27th, and 116 degrees on the 28th, set all-time heat records for the city. Seattle, Washington also had back-to-back days that set all-time heat records. 108 degrees on the 28th after reaching 104 degrees the day prior. In fact, in the previous 126 years, Seattle had only hit 100 degrees 3 times. It reached that mark on 3 consecutive days in June. Quileute, Washington, on the coast of the Pacific Ocean, reached an all-time record of 110 degrees Fahrenheit. This was 45 degrees above average, beating the previous record by 11 degrees. The heat was so intense that roads buckled across the Northwest. In Western Canada, Lytton, British Columbia, reached 116 degrees Fahrenheit, or 46.1 degrees Celsius, on June 27th, setting a new all-time heat record for all of Canada. The following day, the temperature soared to 118 degrees, or 47.5 degrees Celsius, on the 28th. The record lasted for all of 1 day, as it reached a shocking 121 degrees Fahrenheit, or 49.5 degrees Celsius, on June 29th. The previous all-time heat record for the entire country before this was 113 degrees Fahrenheit, or 45 degrees Celsius. To put this into perspective, the temperature in Lytton was hotter than has ever been recorded in Las Vegas, Nevada, except that Lytton is located 1,000 miles north, at 50 degrees north latitude. The all-time high temperature for Las Vegas was 118 degrees Fahrenheit, or 48 degrees Celsius, on July 26, 1931. On June 29th, 6 other locations also exceeded the previous all-time heat record for Canada. Only 44% of homes in Seattle have primary air conditioning installed. 78% of homes in Portland have primary air conditioning installed, which is still far below the nationwide average. In Seattle, modern houses are built to not only have no air conditioning, but many have lots of windows, including south-facing ones with no window coverings. They also don't have sun-blocking film. For most of the year, residents prefer to have the heat come in.
So that's incredible, the amount of heat that built up over the Pacific Northwest and Western Canada. I used to live in Medford, Oregon a long time ago, and for the temperature to get to 110 degrees Fahrenheit on the Washington coast, is incredible because the water temperature is like in the 50s at that time of year. It might even be the upper 40s, just depending on how the currents were flowing, but usually it's in the 50s by that time of the year. And so high temperatures right along the coast would be in the upper 50s or low 60s, and then it would gradually warm up the further inland you would go. But since the wind flow was predominantly from east to west and it was flowing down the higher elevations to lower elevations, it kept all that cold air at bay out over the ocean, and the air sinking, getting compressed and heating up. Just like you probably heard a lot of that same thing, Santa Ana winds for Southern California. It's the exact same principle where winds come from higher elevations to lower elevations and heat up the coastline.
Yeah, this whole scenario would have been very different if the high pressure system had been a little bit differently placed and pushing air from maybe over the ocean to over land instead of the way that it was. The temperatures would have been drastically different.
That's right.
Also, for a single event here to break the entire Canadian high temperature record and be hotter than Las Vegas, Nevada, which is in the middle of a desert if you're not familiar with the area. Like, desert, no water, doesn't like rain, like hot always, the picturesque desert scene. For a place so far north to be hotter than a place like that is an insane stat to add to this event.
I mean, 50 degrees north would be equivalent to what are we talking, London, England range, somewhere in there?
Yeah, close up there.
But because of the way the strong upper low and the position of the strengthening high pressure and that air coming down mountains and compressing, it set the stage for all-time record high temperatures in the 100 teens, 120 plus Fahrenheit range at 50 degrees north, which is absolutely incredible. We don't see much of that over in England because they don't have that same topography. Right. But again, you can get temperatures that hot depending on the position of weather systems and topography.
Another thing being how the houses are set up out there. It's very different than what I'm used to here on the East Coast, but you lived out on the West Coast. Tell us a little bit about how houses and air conditioning work out there.
Yeah, I wasn't as far north as, say, Seattle or Portland, but definitely being out in Southwest Oregon, even during the winter time, it can get pretty cold and clammy and cloudy. So anytime you have windows to let the light in, it definitely uplifts your spirits. So the further north you go, even more so. So definitely if you have the predominant weather features being cooler, you want south-facing windows or more windows to let that light in, let the heat in if the temperatures are on average, lower, so that helps out on your energy bill. Why not take full advantage of the sun when you can? But then when it gets into the situations where you have abundant sunshine and it's just streaming in and you have record high temperatures, yeah, for homes that aren't acclimated to that, they're just not designed that way because the predominant weather patterns result in cooler weather, not warmer weather. You don't need air conditioning, and when you get the sun coming in like that, it can heat up houses and buildings very quickly.
I would venture to guess that maybe some of the newer homes being built in that area have air conditioning.
Probably. And what's also interesting is that this happened in the early summer part where this area of the country typically sees hotter temperatures late July, early August, but this actually occurred right around the end of June, right around when summer was just beginning. So that was also another interesting fact about this.
So there you have the 2021 Pacific Northwest and Western Canada heat wave. Again, if you like what you saw, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing down below. Helps us out a ton. While you're down there, you will find the links to similar videos, as well as the links to our social media and our school weather and our website. While you're down there, if you lived in this area during this time, we would love to hear your experience. Until next time, I'm Kayla.
And I'm Jim.
Thanks for watching.
And we'll see you at the next Meteorology Monday.
Quail-a-ute? What is that?
Quileute.
What? Quail-a-ute?
Quileute.
You pronounce the T at the end?
Yes.
Okay.